Welcome to In It to Win It. This is Steve Barton, and thank you for tuning in. We are back with the expert himself, Rick Rule. Rick, thank you for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for your support of the Rural Classroom. Your participation has been really helpful to Albert and myself.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad I could help, and the pleasure's all on this side of the table, sir. Let's start out like we always do. And what is your macro view of the world economy and financial markets today?
The world economy continues stronger than I anticipate. The headline economic numbers are pretty good. The difficulty is that the world economy isn't working for everybody. It's working for old, fat, bald, rich guys like me. Cheap credit and lots of liquidity benefits people that have assets, that have access to credit, and people that have the knowledge to use it, which is to say it benefits people like me. For that half of society that doesn't have the knowledge to employ credit or have access to credit, this is not a good economy. If you look at the fact that real wages for people who earn wages have been stuck for 25 or 30 years, while the price of goods and services has gone up, this is clearly an economy that benefits people who can employ knowledge, not an economy that benefits people who employs labor. And that problem is going to continue, and that problem is going to exacerbate.
And looking forward into 2025, what is your highest conviction trade for 2025, given what you just said?
I don't know if I can constrain myself to 2025 in the sense that I think in 5-year terms. My highest conviction trade for investors is really high quality oil and gas assets. Will that work in 2025? I don't know. Will it work over the 5-year time frame in terms of total return, which is to say capital gains plus dividends? Absolutely, positively, the answer is yes. Notice, Steve, that I said for investors, not speculators. You aren't going to get 10 baggers in most oil stocks, but the idea that you get predictable, ratable internal rates of return in time over good businesses that are out of favor is something that always works. Oil and gas is a good business and it's out of favor.
Yeah. And your number one pick for oil and gas is still
for most Americans, for most people who don't want to understand oil and gas deeply, the easiest thing to buy is the finest oil company in the world, which happens to be Exxon. Will it be exciting? No. Do you actually want excitement in your retirement account? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's been amazing as long as I've been in it, which is several years, and it just kind of keeps just steadily climbing up, and you collect a dividend, and the share count gets lower. So that is success in my book.
That's right.
Yeah. How do you feel about Devon Energy right now? I feel like it's just getting cheaper by the day, but I feel like it's becoming more valuable. Am I off?
No, you're exactly right. And the board of directors of Devon feels the same way. You'll notice in a board meeting 2 weeks ago, what they have decided to do is use the cash flow that exceeds their need for reinvestment in reducing the share count. Exxon made the same decision 18 months ago. They decided that they were generating so much cash that they would simultaneously meet sustaining capital requirements while increasing returns to shareholders by, in Exxon's case, 14%. The Devon the Devon board of directors feels exactly the same as you.
Okay.
And they've decided that they're going to employ excess cash, and they're generating a ton of it, to return capital to shareholders, largely by way of share buybacks.
Okay, awesome. I like that a lot. Tell us about the Rural Classroom.
Well, I guess the Rural Classroom actually starts 50 years ago. There were a whole bunch of people who, for one reason or another, decided to mentor a young, dumb kid named Rick Rule. And they were fantastic people. Seymour Schulich, who went on to found Franco-Nevada. Ned Goodman, legendary resource investor. The most important mentor of mine of all time is Peter Kundal, one of the legendary value investors. Peter Brown, the list is endless. Adolf Lundin. And I began to feel in my 40s an obligation to pay back. I began to feel an obligation to mentor people in honor of the people who have mentored me. And the Rural Classroom is really about that. I've spent 15 years learning how to invest, primarily in conventional financial services and in natural resources. And I have either made or watched made, I think, every feasible mistake that could be made. And most of them are avoidable. So I decided that what I would do was begin to teach people the lessons that I had been taught and the lessons that I had learned over 50 years of investing. There was a time when I decided that what I would do was write a book. And then I became acquainted with social media. And I learned through social media that people actually understand information by video better than they understand information by reading. I hadn't recognized this because I'm a reader. I happen to be one of the weird people who assimilate information better by reading, but most people don't. Most people need the cadence, they need the diction, they need the nuance of not just spoken English, but video English. So I hope to, in the Rule Classroom, record what ultimately will be 60 hours of instructional material on how to do value investing, how to do balance sheet analysis, how to do natural resource investing, how to do conventional financial services investing. I've done 6.5 hours so far. Meanwhile, around that core curriculum, we have a couple hundred hours of instructional programming done by other people. We have a Q&A every Thursday where somebody is available, often led by yourself. And we have lectures from other high-quality financial educators, people like Joe Mazumdar, people like Adrian Day. Increasingly, what I really look forward to in the Rule Classroom is the addition of a program loosely patterned on Shark Tank, where we bring one company onto the show, not by way of advertising, but really using the same format, Steve, that I would use if I went to somebody's boardroom and they were trying to sell me stock. They give me a presentation. Then I get an hour to ask questions, sometimes with a sidecar expert, say a Joe Mazumdar or an Adrian Day. And then the part that really excites me is there are now 10,000 members of the Rule Classroom. For the final hour, we would open up the interview to all the members of the Rule Classroom to practice the craft that they had learned through the Rule Classroom for the benefit of their own portfolio with a real company in real time.
Do your diligence. I love that one. That was a lot of fun. We did recently with Magna Mining. Yep, Jason Jessup. I'm thinking we're probably going to have a lot more in the works here soon.
I've been talking to a few companies here. When I wander around and somebody says, I'm selling for half what I'm worth, well, I just say, would you like to prove it online? If you prove it successfully, we may solve that problem that your stock is undervalued. If you don't prove it, you may never be able to raise money again. So when you tell me that you're selling for half what you're worth, and you'd like the opportunity to prove it or not, we invite you to do so. Just be really sure that what you say is true.
Okay, piggybacking off of that, we have a lot of mining companies behind us here. What I want to go through and spend about 5 minutes at each booth, maybe ask 3 questions. What 3 questions should I ask each one to kind of get a snapshot for the viewers of that company?
The first thing to do is ask them if they have been a success before in an endeavor that resembles the task at hand.
Okay.
Too often somebody will say, I have been a success in mining. And you say, define that success. And they say, I successfully operated a gold mine in Archean terrain, 2 billion-year-old rock in French-speaking Quebec. But the task at hand is that they're exploring rather than producing for copper gold porphyries in 15 million-year-old accreted terrain in the Spanish-speaking Peruvian highlands. What that means is that the success that they enjoyed is not related to the task at hand.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you say is, how are successes that you have had in the future related to the task at hand? And looking down your company, if your company needs to raise a bunch of money, has the CFO raised a bunch of money before?
Mm.
If you are going into a mine build, has the CFO operated the financial stack of a $400 million build before? Yes or no? What failings at the board level do you see that need to be addressed by the board of directors, in particular by the chairman?
Yeah.
Does the chairman have experience associated with the task at hand? You're exploration manager. You're exploring in Peru. You're exploring in accreted terrain. You're looking for porphyries or epithermal gold. Does your exploration director have relevant experience in Peru? Does he or she speak Spanish just out of curiosity? Can they communicate with the people who do the work?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the first question.
Okay.
And that's really, really, really important.
Yeah.
The second question, and this isn't the questions they want to ask her, by the way. Who owns your company? Do you own any? Do you have enough incentive to work 60 hours a week for 5 years to make me a success? If you don't, you're not going to do it. Who else owns stock? Why do they own stock? How can they help you? If you come to me and say that your stock is 20% owned by the Lundin family, 12% owned by the Goodman family, 3% owned by Eric Sprott, 5% owned by Frank Justra, I'm going to say, oh, I like this. You have people who bring more than money.
Yeah.
And you have people who, if you give them a reason, will give you more money. If you say, my company is owned by the Three Stooges, Schlepp, Schmuck, and Schmo, I'm going to be less impressed.
Okay.
The third question is scalability. Not just scalability, it's a two-part question. What are you looking for? What's your target size? To me, a target size of less than $2.5 or $3 billion in situ recoverable reserves at today's commodity prices is subscale. I don't care. Anything that can go wrong with a small mine can go wrong with a big mine, but only a big mine can make you big money. Why would you take big risk for small reward? That's just lousy arithmetic.
Yeah.
And then there's a fourth question, actually.
Okay.
You need to expand your search.
Okay.
What is today the principal unanswered question associated with your company? By answering unanswered questions, you add understanding and probability to the value of your assets. What is the principal unanswered question today? And how do you propose to answer the question? How much time will it take you to answer the question? How much money will it cost you to answer the question? And if you don't have the money, where are you going to get it?
Okay.
Over 40 years, Steve, of asking that unanswered question, in 80% of the circumstances, the person that I addressed the question to had no answer, which is to say they didn't know what the unanswered question was.
Okay.
Well, how can you answer a question you don't ask? I'm left with the conclusion that for 80% of the people I asked the question to, for them, the unanswered question was, will I be able to draw a salary in 18 months? I understand that that's of interest to them, but it's of no interest whatsoever to me.
Okay. So I need to expand my questions by over 30%. Add a fourth one. What experience do you have that relates to the task at hand? How much insider ownership? Who owns your company? So do you have a vested interest in this doing well?
And do you have vested partners?
Do you have vested partners? Scalability. What are you looking for? And what's the size of the prize? What's your target size? Just like we did in the tier 1 asset boot camp.
Right.
And what is the principal unanswered question that you're trying to answer today?
Right. How long will it take to answer? So often, Steve, the people who listen to your podcasts get the narrative right. But the narrative is a 5-year narrative. So they have a 5-year strategy and they employ too much tactics. That doesn't work. If it's going to take 18 months to answer the unanswered question, you as a speculator need to allow 18 months in your speculation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to match the time frames that you are willing to commit with the time frames that are required to cause the circumstance to occur that will give you the profit that you desire.
Yeah. Yeah. I get a lot of questions around that.
Of course, people wish that they got the answers quicker.
Yeah.
That's like wishing for the tooth fairy when you're a kid.
Yeah.
The truth is that you need to make your expectation conform with reality. If you're not willing to do that, you should go do something sensible with your money. You shouldn't speculate.
Yeah. Yeah. The experience of the task at hand, that reminds me of G Mining Ventures. Those guys did it. They did it again. Now they're producing. They bought another project.
When the Gignac family came to pitch me,
Yeah.
first of all, I knew Louis Gignac Sr. for 30 years. So I was inclined to give him the time of day because I'd watched him succeed before. I talked to his son, who I hadn't known, but I met when they built Fruta del Norte for Lundin, where I was an important shareholder. And LP Jr. says to me, I said, okay, so what do you want to do? He said, we believe that we are the best in the world at building open pit gold mines in tropical high rainfall terrains. We've built 4. And rather than do it for outside parties, we want to do it for ourselves again. We want to buy a high quality asset that requires our construction skill set. 4 months later, they did it. Okay, I'm in, but we don't want to do it one time. We want to do this again and again and again. We want to use the cash flow from the first asset, which will be real, not a starter kit, a real asset. And we want to buy a second asset where we can then utilize our skill set and do it again. And eventually we want to build a franchise around open pit gold mines in tropical high rainfall terrain. Expertise gained over 3 decades, directly applicable to the task at hand, and no variance at all from the game plan.
Yeah, very specific. They've one trick pony, and this is the trick. Okay. And insider ownership, or who owns your company? One that's coming to mind is Rio 2 down in Chile. Wheaton Precious Metals is pretty into it. It's pretty good to me. The people on the board, they own a lot.
And look at Alex Black.
Yeah.
Appropriate experience, copper gold porphyries in the Andes. That's what he does. That's what he does. I happen to know he spends a lot of time in the town I live in now, Anacortes, Washington. But he spends a lot more time in Peru. He's not one of these guys that is trying to direct Peruvian operations from Toronto or London or Sydney. He directs Peruvian operations from Peru.
Yeah.
He speaks Spanish. When his labor force explains to him their problems or what it is that they're trying to achieve, they don't have to explain it in a language that they don't understand. They can explain it to him in Spanish.
Yeah.
And he understands the local context because he's operated in that local area for 30 years.
Yeah. Okay, let's see, where were we? Scalability. So let's see, one that's coming to mind is we've got Centaurus down in Brazil with Darren Gort. That seems like it could grow in size.
It's a great
that rings true?
That's a great choice. The subtext of this
Yeah.
is scalability in a commodity that's out of favor.
Yeah.
Is the best of all worlds. Need that necessarily. The scalability in a commodity that's out of favor. And, when we're talking about scalability, I was talking about reserves and resources that exceed 2.5 billion.
Yeah.
In the context of Centaurus, you're talking much more like 4 or 5 or 10 billion. That's real scaling.
Yeah. Okay. And then answer what is the unanswered question? I suppose that could be different every time. I think one of the best ones that I got was Sean Sean Cocoon of I'm blanking on the name of his company. I don't own it.
Dolly Barton.
Dolly Barton. Thank you. He said, "Is this deposit have 1 billion ounces of silver in it?"
That's partly promotional, but let's go back to a mistake.
Okay.
Not too long ago, I contributed a reasonable amount of capital to a very small company called Chicana Copper. I contributed the capital to Chicana Copper because they had these wonderful tourmalinized breccias indicative of gold and silver and copper mineralization because they were gold and silver copper mineralization.
Yeah.
But that surface expression had along with it a very large gold and soil anomaly and a separate porphyry signature. The unanswered question was, if you drill the surface gold anomaly will you find a high Andes disseminated gold deposit? And if you drill the porphyry anomaly, will you come up with a monster copper gold porphyry that would have been the heat engine for these tourmalinized breccias? That was the unanswered question. Unfortunately, the answer was no. That happens. But you need to identify the unanswered question, and you need to identify how the question was asked. Was it asked because it was convenient for stock speculation? Or was it asked as a consequence of the data, the ground at hand? In the case of Chicana, you had these surface anomalies that were identified, and you had the expression in the form of these breccias. So the question that was asked was based on ground truth data. Unfortunately for me, the answer was no.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rick. Do you have any final thoughts? Any plugs? You're here for Battle Bank.
Yeah, I mean, 2 plugs. If you care what I have to say about natural resource investing and natural resource speculating, you can personalize it. Go to ruleinvestmentmedia.com. List your natural resource stocks for no charge, no obligation. I personally will rank them 1 for 10. Be a little patient. I'm in New Orleans. I'm about to go to London. I don't do those things till I'm home, which is 7 or 8 days from now. Go to Rule Investment Media and do that. If for any reason, by the way, you'd like to learn more about natural resources than just whether I think your portfolio is good or bad, come to the Rule Classroom. 10,000 people are viewing the instructional videos there, participating in the Thursday question and answer sessions, communicating in discussions with each other. You become a better investor by participating in the community of better investors. There is a community of better investors, 10,000 strong, called the Rule Classroom, that you can be part of too, for free. Finally, if for any reason at all you are unhappy with your current bank, and if you are numerate, you are unhappy with your current bank, check out Battle Bank. A battle bank, a community bank where community isn't defined by geography, but rather a community that's defined by value. Self-actualized investors, cautious investors, people who believe that they should be paid interest on their savings, people who would like to diversify and save in currencies other than the dollar, people who believe that gold and silver are good assets. If you aren't happy with your current bank, check out battlebank.com. Or when you go to Rule Investment Media to have your stocks ranked, simply write bank in the question and comment section.
Awesome. All of those links will be in the pinned comment below. Rick, thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
I will see you again in the Rule Classroom, and thank you for tuning in. Be sure to support the show and share this with anyone that you think needs to hear it. It's probably your buddy that can't stop talking about tech stocks. You have yourself a great rest of the day, and we will talk to you next time.